Hello and welcome to Chess Book Reviews 134. Welcome to a number of new people. So it's nice to sign some people up. Please like and subscribe down below. I'm going to talk about the Lewis Chessmen. They were discovered in the 19th century. They were also stored in the 19th century. And this has given rise to some confusion. I've been going through my books, as you guessed I would. Shorter history by Professor Murray, with updates, not very good updates, by Gollenbeck and Big Olding Brown. Looking through it, I can't find any mention of the great set, but you could turn to any page and get some fun out of it, but you couldn't. 1700 to 1850, the chief centre of progressive activity in chess were Paris and London. Now, what he's referring to is, in fact, not so much tournaments, certainly not tournaments at that stage, but coffee houses, and which became clubs, which became centres for discussion as much as anything else. But going through this and using the index, I couldn't find a single mention of the famous Lewis Chessmen. I couldn't find anything. It's a very unusual book. It's a very rare book. It's probably rarer than the larger edition. So there we are. Just thought to show you that anyway. Now here, surprisingly to me anyway, is the real McCoy, published about 1912 or so. And I marked out a passage that mentions the Lewis men. It talks about any amount of other stuff. Charlemagne chessmen, Paris chessmen, again, not prior to the revolution, these chessmen presented the abbey of Saint Denis, Paris. And here we are, right at the bottom. You'll notice it doesn't get the airplay that we would have expected. The Lewis chessmen were discovered in 1831 in a sandbank at the head of the Bay of Uig, on the west coast of the island of Lewis, one of the outer Hebrides. This is no circumstantial account of the discovery. In other words, they don't really know that much about it, but it appears that they were found in a small chamber of dry built stone, resembling an oven, about 15 feet below the top of the sandbank. The chessmen, here are the chessmen. There we are. And they have captured the imagination. Right. In addition to these chessmen, there's a number of other carvings in European museums which have assumed to be chess pieces. Yes, that's one point against so much archaeological digging, isn't it? But you think you see them. That's not them, but this is, or rather, this is, and that's not them. Anyway, this is the Great Murray, who also wrote the book I showed you earlier. Now, here we are with Mr. Richard Eales, brother-in-law to Ray Keane, in his history. Let's see what he says. This kind of fully developed Romanesque set can be found in the Lewis Chessmen. 78 pieces, here we go. 78 pieces were found in the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides in 1831, of which 67 are now in the British Museum and 11 in the Museum of National Antiquities of Scotland, which I think is in Glasgow, but I'd have to check that. No one knows why they were deposited on Lewis in the first place. They originally belonged to 4 sets though 5 made pieces and 45 pawns have been lost. Well, he can't have been a very good player, can he, if he loses 45 pawns in one game? Each of the sets consists of kings, queens, bishops, knights, and warders, armed men. The pawns were designed as inanimate objects resembling decorated milestones. We'll come on to that in a minute. The latest critical study suggests that these chessmen, which are carved in walrus ivory, a traditional material of the northern world, were made in Scandinavia around the mid-12th century. Stylistically, they should be placed between 1135 and 1170. And the fashion of them, of the mitres, on the bishops, of course, suggests a date about 1150. The appearance of the bishops, with or without the latest fashion in mitres, is of some interest, because there's no reference to chess bishops in the documentary sources after 1200. It's quite possible that the image preceded the change of terminology, and that the existence of the representational chessmen led to retained meaninglessness. Right, he goes on to explain they are unique, and they've survived enough surviving examples from elsewhere, particularly Germany and Norman Sicily. I was at school with Norman Sicily, I think. Anyway, to show that they've changed to representational forms was a general and influential one. It certainly was, otherwise I wouldn't be speaking now, would I? Let's see what else he says. Here we are. We mentioned them again. Elsewhere in Northern Europe, the same process was taking place. Whatever might be thought about the early evidence, the Lewis chessmen show that the game was familiar in Scandinavia and on the main Viking trade routes of 1150. I think that's the point, that they were deposited in the Isle of Lewis, but they weren't carved there. Chess wasn't being played there, regretfully, but it wasn't. It may be they were put in for storage or even hidden there. One more reference from Mr. Richard Eales. Let's have a look at that. Let's see what it is. Here we are. The Lewis chessmen testified to the fact that chess pieces were being traded in Scandinavian world as much as half a century earlier, in other words, 1150, 1200. Of the 2 cases from the London roll, I don't know what that is, of 1276 cited above, you'll have to get this book and work it out for yourself, but nevertheless, okay. The first concerns men from Essex, one of whom was a knightly status, while the parties in the second were both members of city families. In other words, some chicanery was going on. Well, that's Richard Eales. Thank you, Dickie. Now, this is Keen's history, and the Lewis men get mentioned by Ray. Here we have a knight. Looks like it's made out of wax. There we are. Let's see what he says. A knight from the Lewis chess set. The glum expression worn by all the pieces belies the fact that these 12th century walrus ivory carver, from whose extensive stock we came, must have been doing a roaring business. The Lewis chessmen constitute the oldest complete set in existence. Well, I'm told the oldest set ever found were these. This is one of the reasons I've done this, because of my interest in postcards. And this is the chess pieces from 1700. It's the earliest known group of chess pieces in the world, originating in India as an aristocratic game, it says. And they came along, they spread because of the Silk Roads. Yes, of course. They affect the movement of luxury goods and elite customs in the Islamic period, probably made in India and excavated in Uzbekistan. In other words, they had gone the rounds, haven't they? I think I prefer the Lewis chessmen. I don't know what you think. These are more ornate, aren't they? Anyway, another quick flash of Ray's book, and it's called The Illustrated Chess History. There we are. There we go. Now something a little bit more scholarly, with respect to Ray. by Mr. Victor Keats. This is a very rare chess book in the Batsford collection. It's two big references to the Lewis Chessmen. Let's have a look. Sorry, I'm not very good at this. Chess was probably brought to England in the 10th century from Scandinavia. You see the link across the North Sea. There was Canute playing chess. Yes, I know that one. We're the Conqueror. The Church objected to chess. To the church, then. Mentions King John. During the Middle Ages, some of the necessary social attributes of the knight and courtiers was a knowledge of chess. In other words, if the king said, "Oh, I'm fed up with signing Magna Carta, would anyone game for a game of chess?" And it mentions Henry VIII. Oh, that's no use to anybody. I thought this was going to mention the Lewis Chessmen. Oh, here we are. The chessmen in the British Museum from the Isle of Lewis in Hebrides, mainly considered to be of the 12th century, have been suspected by some authorities to be from far later period. Well, you can shut up, Victor Keats. Who do you think you are? Anyway, here we are. Another reference I'm looking for. Among the earliest known chessmen are those which were found in the sandbank on the Isle of Lewis in the Outer Hebrides in 1831. The pieces are said to have been in dry underground stone-built chamber. We didn't get that from the other lot. And were thus protected from the elements. They were first ascribed to the 12th century, but some authorities now consider them to be much later date, probably about the 17th century. The style of the pieces is possibly Icelandic. Well, better tell Frederick Olafsson. And there is a Lewis legend that they were brought to the island by an Icelandic sailor who buried them and substantially murdered by a shepherd. Murdered by a shepherd? Right. One queen of similar style was found in the county of Meath in Ireland in the first half of the 19th century and is now in a private collection in Dublin. Well, that would be worth seeking out, wouldn't it? And Tim Harding, if you're listening to this, you could perhaps sort that one out. I'll just read that again. One queen of similar style was found in County Meath in Ireland in the first half of the 19th century and is now in a private collection in Dublin. It mentions 78 pieces, now in a museum in Edinburgh. I think I said Glasgow before. Okay. Well, actually, most of them are in the British Museum now. They have many reproductions of the molds, resin reproductions sold by the British Museum, which are detailed likenesses. In other words, you can buy them. And last, but not by any means first, let's see what we can find in this lovely book, A Celebration of 2,000 Years of Chess. And look, hogging the limelight. Hogging the limelight. There we are. A walrus tusk. Doesn't even mention the word Lewis. Never mind. Now, what can this be? It's the guys themselves. Purchased by me from a hospice shop, a charity shop, a thrift store, if you will, in Basingstoke. Let's see if I can move my camera. You can have a look. There they are. Look, see, look at them. Look at them looking back at you reproachfully. I hope you've enjoyed this little deviation from the usual books. Instead, we've looked at Chessmen. This has been Chess Book Reviews 134. Please like and subscribe down below, where I'll put some other links to the Lewis Chessmen so you can look at others' opinions. But for the moment, please like and subscribe. Thank you.